What is going on YouTube? Today we're going to be going over a little bit of something unique and different, at least for me. We have tier lists all over the place for Honkai Star Rail. I know a lot of people like to focus on Pridewin because they go AoE, they go Blast, they go all of this stuff. But I have seen recently that um, the tier list has really been an issue mainly because of Imbibitor Lune, and that he has been dropped down to a specific tier because, for very vague reasons that are kind of contradictory to their own standards in which they grade the characters. So I figured, what the hey, I'll just do this for fun because, I first of all, I don't have all of these characters. There's some of these characters that I do have, some of them I don't have. It's just how it is because I started the game later compared to a lot of people who started early on. I have a little bit of a text notepad over here on my other monitor. We got some pros and cons, I think, of these characters. If you have an issue with them, by all means, say something because my opinion is probably gonna be different from yours. So we'll go ahead and start off with Yangjing. Also, if I butcher some names, get over it. It's not that big of a deal. You'll see who I'm talking about when I drag in these characters. So we have Yangjing. We have the OG Ice damage dealing unit. Also, keep in mind that all of these units are not destruction. We have Erudition, we have Hunt, we have Destruction. These are just units who they focus on damage. That is what they primarily do. So also keep that in mind. So like I said, we have Ancient right here. This little bad boy right here. So some pros that I have over here is that he increases his own crit rate and crit damage for a turn. He has follow-up damage potential, which is pretty decent. His Soul Steel Sink further increases the crit rate and crit damage. That also just being in that state in itself is very good because that's how he gets his absolute most potential and how he further increases his own capabilities. However, I have a little bit of cons here. So the main issue with him that I have seen, because this is a unit I don't have, is that the Soul Steel Sink goes away after you get hit once. So you primarily want him to be on teams that have shields. So units such as Japard, March 7. I'm probably missing some other units, but you want a shield on him because that's going to prevent him from actually taking, the quote-unquote actual hit, so he can stay in that soul sink state. He also has no multi-target attacks, which I don't like. Now, I know majority of Hunt characters don't, but his primary focus is that, and then he also has that huge downside of just being hit once and he gets out of his state that he's absolutely giga chad in. So with that, I think I'm just gonna place him in S tier because he does a decent amount. I don't think he's the worst overall damage unit in the game. Next up, we have Welt, who is going to be the imaginary Hunt character. Again, one of the OG characters in the Ordinary Standard banner. He has multiple ways of dealing damage to multiple enemies, with his skill providing a 10% slowdown to the enemies, which is very nice. He has the ability to imprison enemies with his ultimate, causing more speed reduction and delay to their action, which is very nice. He has an increased damage to slowed enemies, so he has like a little bit of a inherited buff that he can do for himself, which is very nice. However, he lacks in damage for a lot of enemies, like massive damage, aside from his ult and his skill, I believe. So I guess actually that's not really much of a negative, but he doesn't have any follow-up damage capabilities. And one thing that really shows is he's mainly just focused on slowing down enemies. And while yes, Welt can do a lot of damage early on, there are other units here that just do more for an overall team comp compared to Welt. And I actually think Welt is probably a D tier character just off of what he provides for the team. because, you know, slowing enemies down isn't really that a major of a focus in today's meta. Next, we have Topaz and Nami. They're very strong. Obviously, being a fire hunt character, she provides increased damage taken to the enemy with proof of debt from follow-up attacks and can apply with skill or randomly at the start of every action. Nami is considered a follow-up attack, which is very nice. Also, her normal attacks are considered follow-up, so that's also very nice because by doing that, when you do follow-up attacks, Nami is advanced forward, and Nami does a lot of damage. She also has an increased crit damage, which is also very nice. A major con, though, is that to get the absolute max peak of Topaz and Nami, though, you have to attack the enemy with the proof of debt to get the full capabilities of her. And then if you have no follow-up attackers, you really lack in power. While, yes, she is capable of doing a lot by herself, she really wants to be surrounded by other follow-up attackers. However, saying that, I do think Topaz and Nami are very, very strong and a very good unit to have if you do have them. So next up we have Zila. So Zila is going to be the Quantum Hunt character. Some pros is that she's high single target damage unit. She has Resurgence, which is in itself just a busted ability, being able to advance your next turn all the way to the very front if you manage to kill the enemy. She also increases her own speed. She also has the capability of having stealth for a couple turns, which is nice. So to reduce the likeliness of her being attacked, she is able to regen her own energy pretty well. She has a crit damage boost to 80% against low-level enemies, which is very, very nice. Some cons for her, however, though, is that she is only a single target attacking unit. She is very dependent on Resurgence because that's how she is able to further increase her overall damage and capability. And she's very skill point hungry, which could be a problem. Granted, now we have Hanya out, so that helps out a lot for Zila. But that is something that could be an issue if you aren't planning accordingly with your moves and your turns. However, I still think she is an A tier unit because she just does so much. Next up, we have Kafka, who is Lightning and Nihility. And a major pro to Kafka is that she's capable of doing damage to everybody on just all enemies. She's able to provide dot, which is damage over time. By herself, she's able to instantly cause dot damage to take effect. She's able to amplify the dot damage so that it's even further increased, causing immediate damage, like I said, following her ultimate, which is very, very nice. The other major points that are negative about Kafka, though, she really requires high investment to fully get the absolute most, and you also really want one or two other units on the team that can cause dot damage, being Sampo, Gwenfin, and Luca are some examples of other units that are very good pairing up with Kafka. It's just she relies a lot, and that's her main point is dot damage. So, but she's still very, very strong, I think. It's just you have to really focus and build around her. But she's still very good. So I think she's tough because I'm really thinking A or B here. I think I'm just going to drop her into B, and we might come back later and discuss that. Next up, we have Jing Liu. I love Jing Liu. She has high damage capability for single and AoE. She is able to maintain her spectral transmigration state if you have the right teammates with her, and she just can stay almost in that state for the entire time. She has high crit damage, high crit rate, and then once you get into her spectral transmigration state, she is not reliant on skill points, which is another huge bonus for her. Cons is that requires being aware of the synergy points to maximize her damage, because you have 1, 2, 3, and if you aren't paying that much attention, synergy goes away and she really loses out on her maximum damage capability because being in that spectral transmigration state, she is otherworldly. and if played wrong could lead to defeat due to poor play of HP consumption. Being in that spectral transmigration state, she consumes HP from your whole team. She pairs up really well with Blade, obviously, to really get the most out of both of them. So I do think that Jing Liu is our first S tier unit here. She just does so much and is capable of providing so much damage for just herself, but also able to carry a whole team. Next up, we have her apprentice, Jing Yuan, being a Lightning Erudition unit. Pros, Lightning Lord. I mean, that's the biggest pro, I think, with Jing Yuan, is that at the very start of the when you enter battle, he summons Lightning Lord, and Lightning Lord is like a separate, it's kind of like Nummy, is a separate unit that's not really there, and that he's able to perform follow-up damage attacks. You're also able to increase his base hits with the skill and the ultimate for Jing Yuan. Cons, though, like I said, is he's very reliant on Lightning Lord. Very good against a lot of enemies, but if there's a single enemy, then Jing Yuan is not that great. He really focuses and prides himself on being able to attack multiple people, which really stinks because in lore he's super strong, but as a character, he's still good. I don't think he's on that upper echelon tier. I think I would probably put him above Kafka, though, just because if you do have a lot of enemies, guess what? It's majority of the times, yes, and he's able to do a lot. So I would say he's above Kafka. Next up, we have Himiko, the Fire Erudition unit. Some pros is that she has decent AoE attacks minus her ultimate, because her ultimate is also still very good. Energy regeneration with her ultimate, which is very, very nice. Her victory rush, I think, is her biggest part of her kit and what she is best at. So if you cause weakness break to 3 different enemies, it doesn't matter what the weakness break is. She follows that up, being able to attack all the enemies and have decent attack damage to all the enemies, which is the best part about her kit, and also the main reason why people like to use her. She might have a bump up in usage once Pure Fiction comes out, the new game mode, but until then, we don't know. Cons is that she's very reliant on high trace levels, so when you are starting out, she is not going to be as strong, but if you are late game and you have high trace investment, she's going to be very, very strong for multiple enemies and for crowd control, and she's also not good against solo enemies. Granted, again, just like Jing Yuan, many enemies is a very common thing. However, being reliant on one thing, I think, really hurts Himiko. I think Jing Yuan is better than her, just because Lightning Lord is so strong, and also because Jing Yuan has the capability of further increasing the hit capacity of Lightning Lord. Next up, we have Denhong Imbiber Lune in the Imaginary Destruction character. Pros: great damage to both single and multiple targets. He's able to further increase his own attack by doing a lot of skill point consumption. We'll get into that later. He has a basic attack damage boost, which is very nice. He's able to boost his damage with his talent. Cons: very skill point reliant and hungry. He wants skill points like nobody else in the game. It is crazy how much skill points he wants. Hanya should help with that, the new 4-star character that just came out. So that is very nice. He also requires units to boost skill points to maximize him, like I said, with the Hanya. So at least 2 slots on your team will already be taken up, one being the Imbiber Lune, the other would be a skill point boosting unit like Hanya. However, saying that, though, I still think Imbiber Lune is S tier, because of the raw damage and capability he's able to do. Also, if you use your ultimate, there's like there's little charges, kind of like Himiko. There's 4 little charges. Once you use your ultimate, you are able to actually use those instead of the skill points to further use his damage output, so that helps. But he is very skill point hungry. Next up, we have Clara, the Physical Destruction unit. Some of the pros for her is that she has damage reduction with Svarog. She is very reliant on Svarog. Let's just say that how it is. She has great follow-up attack damage, AoE capacity to adjacent enemies, which is very nice. Even good damage against single targets. which is very, very nice. However, some of the cons, like I said, is that she's very reliant on Svarog. If you do not have Svarog there to, taunt and give damage reduction to her, she does very little. So that stinks. So you need to perform the ultimate to get her maximum capabilities. And she also can't be the main damage dealer on the team because, like I said, if you do not have the ultimate up, then the damage really, really lacks. And she relies most of her damage on counters. So again, it's very similar to how Himiko and Jingyuan. The pure fiction is really, I think, going to make or break Clara, but at the moment, I think she is S or C tier. She does fit on Topaz teams very well. However, if you do not have Topaz, then you are really, really not going to get the full capabilities of Clara. So I think Clara, with Topaz, I think Clara actually shoots up to top of B, maybe borderline A, but without Topaz and Nami, Clara, I think, is definitely C tier. Next up, we have Blade, the wind destruction monster that he is. He is capable of sustaining himself. He absorbs HP, and also once you get the 5 counters off for the HP consumption, he does AoE damage to everybody on the enemy side, and he restores HP, which is very nice. He has high damage output with his ultimate, talent, and single target after he uses his skill. He is also a unit that's not very skill point reliant like most other characters, like example Yan Heng. So that's very, very good for Blade. Like I also mentioned earlier, him with Jingliu is very strong because they just do so much. Cons, though, is that while his sustain is good, you need a very good and decent sustain unit to further provide that HP and healing to him, because he does absorb and take a lot of HP from himself. So you do run the risk, if you do not play accordingly and play very poorly, you run the risk of him dying because of his HP consumption. However, saying that, I do think he is actually an A tier DPS. I would probably put him actually above Topaz and Nami if I can do that right here, because Topaz and Nami is very reliant on other teammates that are very strong. So it's not a problem. Next up, we have Argenti, who is the physical erudition unit, the brand new unit that just came out. He is very good at crowd control. If you just use him in his trial run, you will see that he just does so much. Also, with the brawl event going on right now, you can use him on the first stage. Very, very strong. Having 2 different ultimates provides a lot of flexibility for him, being 90 and 180 energy for both versions of the ultimate. Granted, the 180 version does more damage and able to do damage over time, which is nice. He provides great crit rate for himself inherently, which is very, very good. And unlike a lot of these characters who, while they are good, if they have additional Eidolons in them, they are even better. Argenti at E0 is already super strong, so that's a very, very good plus for him. And he's very simple to use. He regenerates energy like nobody else on this list, and that's good because he does have the highest ultimate in the game at 180 energy, which I think is probably at the moment the biggest downside for him. The other downside is that he really does not provide a whole lot for everybody else on a team. He's just focused on himself doing a lot of damage. So the brand new Argenti, I think actually I'm going to put him in A tier above Zilla. I really like him actually now, looking more at his kit and just practicing him and just using him here and there. I don't own him, so I have to use him in the trial run and the little boxing thing. Granted, little boxing area, it is physical weakness units, but just the fact that he's able to do so much just by himself and very awestruck about that, I think is very, very good. So at the moment for DPS units, this is where I think the list is. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and we'll eventually cover the other 5-star units in the game.